Good evening, everyone. This is DM Bloodworth, and I'm returning for another weekend video clip. This weekend, I decided that I was going to show you another one of the games I'm interested in, and that is Modiphius's Robert E. Howard's Conan. It's a 2D20 RPG, subtitled Adventures in a Land Undreamed of. All right, so this is a tabletop role-playing game, so a little bit different than what I'm usually showing you podcasts for, with the exception of, the more recently Star Frontiers. So as you can see, if you go to Modiphius's website, you can purchase this game now. It is out of the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter ended, I believe, last January. I had bought into it probably the year before that, so it's been, almost a 2-year wait for the physical books to be released. I've played it a little bit. I tested it off of the quick start PDFs that were released to early backers, and I played one game session over the internet. With a small group of friends. And now that the game is really going to start to come in physical copy into people's hands, including my own, I just got the email recently. I'm really looking forward to digging into the books and learning the system as best I can, and then starting to GM games and also participate in various games online as a player. So if you go to their website, I mean, you can click on this here, intro, and they basically highlight, they're basically going to highlight the game and the evolution of the game, and they talk about some of its past history. I'm not going to bring you through the entire 4.5 minutes of this, and you can still make some various purchases. Obviously you can, they go through and explain what you can expect to find in the core book, and the various there's a full range of information that you can get from their website specifically about this game. The other thing I wanted to show you is that there is a pretty vibrant Google Plus community, just simply labeled Conan RPG. And here you can meet with a number of enthusiasts that are talking about the game and basically the other games of Conan or Conan related games as well. But what I really wanted to show you today was they have been releasing, in small pieces, the character generator that is online. And so you can go to conan.frostkin/development.se, and that will bring you to this current screen. So right now you could use the core rules to select a character and create a character. So you can select normal, shadow of the past, play the hand that you're dealt, or a totally random generation. I can add to the core rulebook the source book for thieves, and that will open up different professions and archetypes and other types of traits and abilities. I can also open up the core book, the thief book, and the barbarian book to keep on expanding those those options that you have for character creation, and also for the skill sets that your character you might want them to have access to. So as other source books are added to this character creator, then then you can just opt out of some of the other ones that you don't, intend to use, just to remove some of the clutter. So what I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to obviously use the core book, and I'm going to create a barbarian character. I'm going to use the normal character generation system, so I want to be able to see everything. And instead of rolling the homeland, I'm going to select it. And so when you select homeland, you can see all of the homelands that you can choose. And each one has a talent that is assigned to it. So if you go with Acolonia, you're going to have a cosmopolitan talent. Argos, a sea raider. The ever-present Cimmerian, you will have a hunter talent. But I am going to go with a Nordheimer, which is a winterborn talent, and I'm going to select that. And when I select that, it gives me the choice between which region of Nordheim I want, either Asgard or Vanaheim. I will stick with Asgard, and it explains what the winterborn talent actually does, and the language option is Nordheimer. Next up, I could go to, and I come to this screen where I can start assigning different attributes. You start off with a base 7 in every attribute. You have agility, awareness, brawn, coordination, intelligence, personality, and willpower. Now, with the character generator, unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what skills go to these particular attributes. So you kind of either have to pull that off from someplace else so you can see what skills go into those categories. That way you can craft your character with kind of an end game vision in mind, or you can just move along and see how the character generation ends up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave these all straight 7s. I'm going to go to aspects. And once again, I'm going to select. So an aspect is you choosing 2 attributes to select your character's physical and mental prowess. And so here we go. And you have various aspects of your character. And if we'll just take a look at the top one, strong and resolute. The mandatory attributes that I would have to increase are brawn and willpower, and then the optional are personality and intelligence. So I know that I'm going with a character that is going to be melee, a combat, oriented character, but still have some, some toughness and some survival to him. So I'm going to want to go with fast and fit, which will give him agility and brawn, which are both. The agility will increase his ability for melee attacks, and brawn will obviously give him, a toughness and also a strength bonus should that rise high enough. So I'm going to select that. And then my second aspect, I'm going to take something that either doubles up on that, which will allow him to become very powerful in that area, or I might look to spread it out a little bit so that he or she will become more effective or balanced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with Warrior Born, because I want someone who is, kind of, that's the goal I'm going for. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be like a raider, an Azir raider. So mandatory attributes, when you choose best and worst, it will start to adjust these. So if I click on agility for best, you can see it gives me 1 point here. And if I go to worse, it will drop 1 down. All right. Now, like I said, I don't necessarily want to make my character weaker in bronze. So what I might do is here, I would make my awareness worse. And then over here, I have an optional attribute, and I have to choose one that is first and then one that is secondary. So where I took away from awareness here, I can increase it, bring it back up over here, and then under agility, I can increase my agility once again. Now I go on to cast of my character, and once again, I'm going to select his cast. So he's a person of the north, so barbaric might seem to be a good choice. He's also, he's also a warrior, so I might go with, warrior, and that will give him talents of sentry and subject, a parry ability. Um, I am going to go with warrior. And so now he's picked up an expertise and a focus in parrying, and his talents are sentry and subject, and they describe what each of those do. Now I go to my character's individual story. So once again, selecting the story. If he was involved in a decisive victory, he would have a valorous trait, glorious battle, veteran, idle hours guarding open gates, he is cursed, idle hours guarding cold walls, he is hedonist, a blood-soaked endeavor, he is his trait is greed, and a disastrous battle means that he's a coward. So I'm going to say that he's glorious in battle, and so he's a veteran. And they go through and they explain what that trait actually means. Archetype. Once again, selecting archetype. So these include the core book of Barbarian, and so that is added in here. These others are, either part of the original, the core book, or they are specific to Barbarian. So I have a Barbarian, which is melee and no mercy. The career skill is melee. The talent is going to be no mercy. And then here are the mandatory skills and the elective skills. And so he or she is going to have, certain points allotted to this group of skills, and as well as one of these three other skills. Or I can come down here and go to Raider, the melee focused, no mercy, so same talent, athletics, parrying, ranged weapons, warfare, acrobatics. I'm going to go with a Raider. And now you start to see, a slightly better picture. So now his melee is a +2, his melee focus, his expertise and focus are both +2. No mercy, when you make a melee attack, you may re-roll a number of damage dice equal to the total number of melee talents and ranks in those talents. All right, and so basically you get to re-roll any of your damage dice that didn't result in a damage. And that will allow you to, become much more effective in combat. So his mandatory skills, he has athletics now is at a +1. His parry is at an additional +1, so a total of +2 at this point. Ranged weapons and warfare are all +1. And now I have to choose one of these elective skills. So I can take acrobatics, resistance, or stealth. Resistance is your basically your health, your hit points. So that's always a good one to choose. And then you have to choose a second elective. And so I don't have anything in acrobatics, and I don't have anything in stealth yet. And raiders sometimes raid at night, and so they have to be somewhat stealthy. So I will add a point there. You get to choose your weapons here that you get as part of your overall character class, if you want to call it that. And so I'm going to go with, since he's kind of a Nordic kind of character, I'm going to go with a battle axe. I am going to go with I want a spear. And I will probably go with, well, there's a regular spear. Let's go with a boar spear. He automatically has a target. Actually, a boar spear is not at two. That's a two-handed weapon. So let me go with a throwing axe instead, because he does need something for range. There it is, throwing axe. And he starts with a full suit of brigandine, which is an armor 2 for torso and arms. Now I go to the character's nature. I'm going to select his nature. So he could be cautious, curious, inspirational, learned, practical, scheming, sneaky, stoic, supportive, wrathful, dusty bound, and proud. Wrathful, I'm looking at, once again, melee ranged weapons, resistance, acrobatics, discipline, parry, so I'm going to go with wrathful. So he's kind of an uptight kind of person. You can see his attribute now is going to be brawn, so he's getting another +1, so he's at a 12 overall for brawn. At 13, in any attribute, you become, you get an additional trait for being following an epic bloodline or an ancient bloodline. And so, perhaps his brawn will reach 13 by the time we get to the end of the process. So now his melee has an overall expertise and focus of 3, so that's a +3. His ranged weapons are now +2, so he'll be halfway decent with his throwing axe. His resistance is +2, so now he's somewhat tough. He already has 2 in parry here. He has nothing in acrobatics and nothing in discipline. So I'm going to put this in discipline because he does have a warrior's background, and that does require a certain amount of discipline. And now I get to select a talent. Now, when you're selecting talents, you get to choose talents that are aligned with some of your abilities, your traits. So he can take accurate, which is a ranged weapons. He could take blood on steel, which is melee. He could take courageous, deflection, death blade, grapple, or hardy, which is resistance. I'm going to go with blood on steel. And it basically says what he does. You do not hesitate to bloody your weapons when rolling for damage. You will melee attack. You may spend 1 momentum in order to add the vicious 1 quality to the weapon, or increase the weapon's vicious quality by 1 if it is already possesses that quality. So, basically a vicious is a bonus to either damage or bleeding or some other benefit to it. If you secure or if you roll the correct numbers, you will apply these additional effects. Now he's going to go to education. You must select 2 elective skills. So I need a second one. So I'll go with acrobatics just to spread it out a little bit. Education. So here you get to select your education for your character, and once again, mandatory and elective skills and talents that are also assigned to it. And he's going to be educated on the battlefield. So now he's picked up some healing. He's finally gained a +1 there. Additional survival. So there. And His melee expertise is already +3. This is already +3. His ranged weapons. So I am going to, once again, because this is his primary, he'll go with a melee and ranged weapon. Selecting a talent. I'll take Killing Strike. Killing strikes are deadly, making corpses of all who cross you. When you inflict 1 or more wounds as a result of a melee attack, you may spend 2 momentum in order to inflict an additional wound immediately. Against a mob or squad of enemies, this additional wound may be applied to another member of that mob or squad. In essence, if you're dealing an extra point of damage for a regular junk mob, you're basically killing them with 1 hit. And if there are any additional points of damage that you've inflicted from your attack, you get to kind of chain link them to the next target in your range. And so this is how you do something very Conan-esque, where you're wading through a whole bunch of, palace guards and just cutting them down like reaping wheat in a field. Equipment. So I have my battle axe, I have my my throwing axe, and so now I'm just going to go with I will go with a spear. I don't necessarily know the difference between a barbed spear and a regular spear. Maybe I will stay with the barbed spear because that might be coming out of the barbarian booklet. So next is my character's war story, and I can take a war story from the core, or I can take a war story from the barbarians. I will take a war story from the barbarian, and I will select it. All right, and captured by slavers, fell victim to a curse, left for dead after a slave raid, mentioned in the saga, prevented a massacre. All right, observation, lore and melee, observation and persuade, survive a raid on your village, melee and stealth, swore a great oath, discipline and athletics, witnessed an insurrection, counsel and insight. I want to be a little bit observant here, so I wanted to prevent a massacre, or that might really be the only thing. I prevented a massacre. Okay. All right, now we get to customization. So now at this point, back to the attributes. I can increase 1 attribute by 2 points or 2 attributes by 1 point each. And so what I can do at this point is I would increase my I'm going to increase my agility to 12 total, and I'm going to increase my brawn because I want 1 skill that is going to be that will unlock my bloodline. So I will make him exceptionally strong for a starting character. And now I choose 3 skill points to place in any one of these other 3 skills. So now I'm going to start looking over all of the skills I have available. I'm going to see what I have, trained fairly high at this point. So +2, +3 are fairly high skills. Athletics, I might want to throw a point in there. You can only increase these by 1 point apiece. I have no command ability. I do have some discipline, some healing, no insight, no linguistics, no lore. My melee is already +4, which is phenomenal. My observation is, a 1. My parrying is +2. My persuade is +1. My ranged weapons is already +3. My resistance, again, resistance is your toughness. I certainly want that to be +3. Um, my stealth I added one. My survival is a little bit higher. I have some warfare ability. Let's come back here, and I am going to put I'm going to put an extra point in observation, and another point in survival. Okay. So at this point here, you select one talent from any of your already trained abilities. So I'm going to keep on going with melee, and I will add Deft Blade. You wield the blade as if it was an extension of your arm. Whenever you make a melee attack, any momentum spent or points added to Doom to add bonus d20s to the melee test adds 2 dice instead of 1. All right, the normal limit of 3 bonus d20s still applies. Okay, I do have an ancient bloodline, and my ancient bloodline will be Nordheimer. And so it goes through the details of what that ancient bloodline does for me. Bonus language, knowing the lore somewhat. The people of Nordheim, particularly the Azir, tend to be on fairly decent relations with the Sumerians, and so I will take that as a second language. Now we go to, you start the game with 3 fortune points. You can permanently sacrifice 1 fortune point to improve an attribute or a skill. You can improve an attribute by +1, or any 2 skills by or any 1 skill by +2. So if I wanted that agility of a 13 as well, I can throw the point in there, or I can put 2 points down in one of my skills down here. Or I can just say none and keep my 3 fortune points. Now, in my playtesting and everything, I didn't find much use for 3 fortune points. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take a look at some of my kind of weaker skills here. And I'm thinking I'm going to throw an extra point in coordination to bring that up to an 8. All right, my belongings. I mean, this is all cosmetic. So a magnificent drinking horn made with metal, made with a metal cup. I guess I'll keep that. Garments, a thick wool cloak trimmed with white fox fur. I like a slightly more rugged look. So let's see. It doesn't matter. I'll just keep that as well. My weapon in Providence, so I'm going to say the weapon that I have is I will keep that battle axe is my primary weapon, and I'm going to say the battle axe is the head of the blade made from meteoric iron, carved with runes of inscrutable meaning, forged by dwarves, say the legends, broken or notched but still serviceable, stolen or borrowed, I'm going to say that it is a battle axe of my chieftain. And now I'm going to finish up. Now at this point, you just name your character. This is a character name that I've been using lately. So Torvik Bloodverd. Male, age 20 is fine. Appearance, you can type in a very short description of appearance. And then it starts to show you all of his abilities. So you can see his ability of agility is a 12. And so it says the skills now that fall under agility, which is acrobatics, melee, stealth. His awareness is insight, observation, survival, and thievery. His awareness is a 9. His brawn is athletics and resistance. That's a 13. His coordination is his parry, his ranged, and his ability to sail. And, we still don't have the final numbers on the individual skills. It tells all of the talents that he has. His intelligence, personality, willpower, abilities, his 2 languages, all of the weapons or equipment that he's starting off with. I'm going to export this now to the character chart. As soon as it's finished downloading, I'll be able to open it. There it goes. Okay, so here we have the character sheet, and I know it's a little bit difficult to read, but if you see, so his ranged attack, his bonus damage is a +1, melee is +3. If we look at his vigor, his physical ability, this is the number of hit points he can basically take in damage. You can see he has 16, which is fairly high. It gives all the his stats and his talents and his background information. Over here, his skills. His acrobatics with the 2+2s gets added to his agility, so he has a target number of 14, his melee a target number of 16, and his stealth is a target number of 13. So this is on a roll of 2d20. So you roll 2d20s, and that's the number that you have to roll below. And so you can see his ability in melee, 2 chances to receive a hit, result under his target ability. So, that's fairly high. His awareness is a 9, and so his observation is an 11. His other regular skills are roughly 9. His athletics and resistance, his brawn was a 13, so his athletics is 14. So anytime he's doing an athletic task, he needs to roll a 14 or less with, once again, 2d20 rolls to check for success. His resistance is a 16, so that resistance both gives him his physical vigor, his ability to take wounds, but it also is used for resistance checks. His coordination, so his ability to parry, his ranged weapons are a 14, which is fairly high. Once again, he's pretty decent with a 14. That's a 14 out of 20 chance of hitting. His intelligence is one of his lower stats. His personality, again, one of his lower stats, although he might have some individual skills that increases that a little bit higher. And his willpower, once again, not very much in there other than discipline, which is at 8. So he'd have to roll an 8 out of, on a d20 or 2 d20s being rolled. The rest of the character sheet is filled in, so additional belongings they list here, and then you can, add in the actual the actual weapon stats. They put the names of the weapons here, but they don't actually list the weapon stats. Maybe that'll be something that also gets included in the character generator. So coming back to the very beginning, unfortunately we can't just go all the way back and hit a back button to go back on this. But if we refresh, we get back to the very beginning, and core is always in use. Now if we take a look at thief, you can see now we'll just roll homeland because I just want to show you the other things. So this thief will be from Darfar. His attributes, we'll keep them the same. 2 attribute aspects, we're going to roll them. And so now he is foolhardy, wise, and friendly. So kind of disparate kind of. So he could be brave and wise, I guess, or brave and friendly. So we will go with agility as his best and willpower as his lowest. Actually, let's make that personality as his lowest. Optional attributes, we will go with brawn and coordination. All right, cast, we're going to roll his cast. So he's a farmer, or formerly a farmer. His story, we're going to, let's select his story because he was a, we're using the thief. So we'll select ample winter and balance. Well, he's from Darfar, so it's a blessed harvest, not a spare being trusted or traitor, not a spare being. Let's say he's a traitor. All right, archetype. We're going to select an archetype now because we chose art. We chose the thief booklet, and we're going to go with he has scoundrel now or pirate. We'll select pirate. Although a Darfur from pirates, so obviously we're going to go with sailing and thievery. It doesn't much matter. I guess a barbed spear will be fine. His nature, will select nature, and he is going to be sneaky. His awareness is going to be a little bit higher. Thievery, he's going to have acrobatics and athletics. Now we want to do stealth. His education, we will select against parents' will, abroad, educated by masters. Let's see. I'm looking if he was a pirate. Let's say he was pressed into service, so under duress. And we will choose these two. A talent. We will go with we'll go with ransack. Right, so his war story. Wait a second. Why didn't pirate? Let's see something. I could have sworn I selected that.
you now don't forget to make lunch reservations. I don't know if it's been doing that. I can't, it just came up on top. I don't know how to do it if I'm on the phone. I can also when a text comes up, it just comes up on top. So they get
Let's our archetype. Select archetype. We'll still go with pirate, sailing, thievery, nature. Scheming. All right, roll a thief education. So he's a lock breaker. Heist of note, angry drunk, planned effect of several thefts, plundered a merchant vessel. Let's see. Good. Okay. Darfur, and let's get a good Zagaran. Makes sense. Let's see. All right, and we'll export this one, and then we'll be able to get to see this character once it's done. Once again, it kind of slows things down when you can't just backspace or go back to the original page. You have to basically reboot all the way. And so now looking at this character, you can see less hit points. Still +3 in melee. So his agility is a 10. His melee level now is a 12, as opposed to the other character that was a 16. But 12 was still fairly high. Once again, 2d20. You only have to roll a 12 or lower on one of those two in order to make a hit. His awareness is a 7, obviously one of his lower skills, although observation with a +2, thievery with a +2, survival with a +1. And so none of those are the base. His brawn is fairly high with a 12. So his resistance is still a 14. And that's why he had such a reasonably high physical ability. His coordination is only a 7. Not much sense for a sailor, although he had 3 points in sailing. So if I were to recreate this character with that more in mind, I would remember to, keep coordination as at least one of his secondary attributes that I'd put some extra points into, and so on. So what might be helpful is if you get the skill categories and everything in front of you, so that you kind of can steer where your character's going in, and then you can add those to, add those points as you're going through the character generation, to the areas that you want your character to be, proficient in. And so that's pretty much a short tutorial on the Conan RPG and its character generation system. And I'm sure as the books start coming out and people will start focusing on producing this and bringing it up to date as the other books are finalized and added to it. So you all have a good evening. Thank you for joining in. I'll have this posted up shortly for you to take a look at. DM Bloodworth signing off.